It can't be easy being Benjamin Netanyahu. This week he spoke at a joint session of the US Congress, the fourth time in his career, something no other leader has done. Last time Netanyahu spoke to Congress in 2015, he went out of his way to praise President Barack Obama. Although, of course, the antipathy between the two of them was well known. And indeed, with Obama's and now Biden's insane policy of releasing billions of dollars to the mad mullahs of Iran, that cannot have been easy for him.
The remarkable alliance between Israel and the United States has always been above politics. It must always remain above politics.
No matter on which side of the aisle you sit, Netanyahu went on to say there back in 2015, you stand with Israel. But is that true? In my opinion, President Barack Obama did huge damage to Israel and the Middle East with his appeasement of Iran, and then Joe Biden made things a million times worse with his cowardly withdrawal from Afghanistan and his bungled moral equivalence in the aftermath of the horrific events of October 7th, which we shall be talking more about in a moment with a very special guest. But the role of the Israeli Prime Minister is to keep the US alliance as strong as possible, whoever is in power. So this week, rather than simply urging the US to stand with Israel, Netanyahu needed to make Americans understand that the barbaric war against Israel by Hamas is also a war against all of us in the West. Here in Australia, too, it is our fight, too.
We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization. For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together.
And indeed, we must stand together too. You only have to witness the horrendous scenes outside Netanyahu's speech as the pro-Palestinian vandals wreaked havoc, burning the US flag, vandalising monuments such as the Liberty Bell, peppered with phrases like, "Hamas is coming," to recognise the truth in those words. Even here in Sydney, we've seen echoes of that same barbarism with disgusting scenes outside the New South Wales Labor Party conference. So Netanyahu's job in front of Congress was to draw together the strands since the horrors of October 7th, to join the dots and to point out the idiocy of calling for a ceasefire in Gaza before Hamas is defeated, as well as the falsehood of accusing Israel of genocide and apartheid. But first, he took us back to October 7th.
These monsters, they raped women, they beheaded men, they burnt babies alive, they killed parents in front of their children, and children in front of their parents. They dragged 255 people, both living and dead, into the dark dungeons of Gaza.
And thanks to the determination of Netanyahu and the Israeli government, some have survived those dark, hellish dungeons and tunnels, including Noah Argamani, the girl kidnapped on the motorbike who suffered God knows what nightmares at the hands of Hamas. But she was rescued in a daring raid ordered by Netanyahu just a few weeks ago, fulfilling a commitment Netanyahu made to Noah's mother, who was dying of cancer, that she would get to hug Noah one last time before she died, which did happen. And Noah stood there proudly, being cheered at the audience at the amongst the audience at the Congress. So, too, did the brave soldier Avichai Reuven, an Israeli of Ethiopian descent.
In the early hours of October 7th, Avichai heard the news of Hamas's bloody rampage. He put on his uniform, grabbed his rifle, but he didn't have a car. So he ran 8 miles to the front lines of Gaza to defend his people. You heard that right? He ran 8 miles, came to the front lines, killed many terrorists, and saved many, many lives. Avichai, we all honor your remarkable heroism.
And I'm confused because, you see, he is Ethiopian, he's black. Aren't we always being told that all Israelis are white, privileged colonisers and Israel is an apartheid state? A black Ethiopian Jew running 8 miles? But wait, here's another member of the IDF.
Like Ashraf, the Muslim soldiers of the IDF fought alongside their Jewish, Druze, Christian and other comrades in arms with tremendous bravery.
Oh my goodness, black Jews, Muslim Israelis, knock me down with a kippah. Contrast those brave individuals with the appalling way in which so many of these radical left-wingers, academics and other protesters in the West, and we've certainly seen it here in Australia, have sided with the butchers of Hamas.
Clarity begins by knowing the difference between good and evil. Yet incredibly, many anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil. They stand with Hamas. They stand with rapists and murderers. They stand with people who came into the kibbutzim, into a home. The parents hid the children, the 2 babies, in the attic, in a secret attic. They murder the families, the parents. They find the secret latch to the hidden attic, and then they murder the babies. These protesters stand with them. They should be ashamed of themselves.
They should indeed, and we must all understand that this war is our war.
Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots.
Netanyahu then went into a lengthy defence of Israel's actions in Gaza and superbly dismantled the claims by none other than Kamala Harris, who did not even bother, by the way, to attend his speech when she insisted several months ago that an Israeli incursion into Rafah would be unacceptable to her.
Any major military operation in Rafah would be a huge mistake. Let me tell you something. I have studied the maps. There's nowhere for those folks to go. And we're looking at about 1.5 million people in Rafah who are there because they were told to go there, most of them.
Kamala had studied the map like she does with most things, but she never actually goes anywhere. And as usual, she was wrong. She had no idea what she was talking about.
Remember what so many people said? If Israel goes into Rafah, there'll be thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of civilians killed. Well, last week, I went into Rafah. I visited our troops as they finished fighting Hamas's remaining terrorist battalions. I asked the commander there, how many terrorists did you take out in Rafah? He gave me an exact number, 1,203. I asked him, how many civilians were killed? He said, Prime Minister, practically none, with the exception of a single incident where shrapnel from a bomb hit a Hamas weapons depot and unintentionally killed 24 people? The answer is practically none. You want to know why? Because Israel got the civilians out of harm's way, something people said we could never do, but we did it. These heroes here today, the heroic soldiers of Israel, should not be condemned for how they're conducting the war in Gaza. They should be commended for it.
Netanyahu was too diplomatic to name Kamala Harris because that's the tightrope any Israeli Prime Minister has to walk to avoid the appearance of favouring one side of US politics over the other, when the reality is that one side is friendly to Israel and the other side is not. Indeed, have a listen to Kamala Harris last November.
As a result of the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we have seen an uptick in anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, anti-Semitic, and Islamophobic incidents across America. And so today, I am proud to announce the Biden-Harris administration will develop our nation's first national strategy to counter Islamophobia.
If your response to the horrors of October 7th is a strategy to combat Islamophobia, I have no words, certainly none I can utter on live television. And I hate to say it, but here in Australia, it's little different, as we saw this week, with Penny Wong, yet again, holding Israel to a completely different standard to anyone else, imposing sanctions on Israeli settlers, but no, not a single sanction against, for example, Qatar for harbouring Hamas butchers, or against anyone involved in the horrors of October 7th. No sanctions there. Netanyahu pointed out that Iran is actually financing these pro-Palestinian protests, and he explained why.
When he founded the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khomeini pledged, "We will export our revolution to the entire world. We will export the Islamic revolution to the entire world."
The seeds of an Islamic revolution are being sown in our streets and on our campuses, and we are just sitting back and letting it happen.
It came from the foreign minister of Iran's proxy, Hezbollah, and he said this: "This is not a war with Israel. Israel," he said, "is merely a tool. The main war, the real war, is with America."
Netanyahu then spelled out the long history of Islamist violence against America and the West before explaining why and how the war in Gaza can and must end.
In World War II, as Britain fought on the front lines of civilization, Winston Churchill appealed to Americans with these famous words: "Give us the tools and we'll finish the job." Today, as Israel fights on the front line of civilization, I too appeal to America. Give us the tools faster and we'll finish the job faster.
Hear, hear, but this is of course not what the Democrats in the US or Labour in Britain or the Albanese government here want to hear. But Netanyahu went further.
Gaza should have a civilian administration run by Palestinians who do not seek to destroy Israel. That's not too much to ask.
Sadly, it appears it is too much to ask, as this journalist discovered when he went into the West Bank recently.
You're supportive of Hamas?
Yes.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Are most Palestinians?
Yeah.
Palestinian people like Hamas.
I'm with the resistance.
Did you see the videos they posted of what they did on October 7th?
Everything.
And you're okay with all that?
With everything they did.
Do you want to live with the Israelis in peace? Or
No, I want one state solution. No Israel.
So no more Israel?
Yes.
Israel wiped off the map?
Palestine فقط.
We should delete Israel.
So you would not be okay with a two-state solution?
Of course not.
And yet there's Albo and Wong and the rest pushing for a two-state solution. What a joke. As Netanyahu says, an entire generation of Palestinians need to be de-radicalised and demilitarised. But here's where the real truth could not be avoided. Despite even Netanyahu's brilliant attempts at being the even-handed diplomats at the US Congress, the truth, well, speaks for itself.
The new alliance I envision would be a natural extension of the groundbreaking Abraham Accords. Those accords saw peace forged between Israel and 4 Arab countries, and they were supported by Republicans and Democrats alike. We could call... I have a name for this new alliance. I think we should call it the Abraham Alliance. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in brokering the historic Abraham Accords. I also want to thank President Trump for all the things he did for Israel, from recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, to confronting Iran's aggression, to recognizing Jerusalem as our capital and moving the American embassy there.
Actions speak louder than words. Donald Trump's actions brought peace to the Middle East, only for it to be plunged into war by the cowardice, the appeasement, and the reckless pro-Iranian policies of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Try as he might, Benjamin Netanyahu could not cover up that simple and undeniable fact. Here in Australia, it is no different, and the actions of the appalling Foreign Secretary, Penny Wong, do nothing for peace, but threaten, in my opinion, everything we in the West hold dear. Netanyahu didn't dare say it, so I will. Western civilization needs Donald Trump back in the White House.